Well, let's stay with this story and get into the conversation now. The Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs Minister Thembi Nkadimeng. Minister, good evening to you and thank you for your time. I'm sure you're going to want to respond to the Democratic Alliance and what they have just said moments ago. But let's start with where are talks in terms of declaring the area of Margate a disaster area?
Well, MEC Duma just indicated what is happening in terms of assessment. It is the responsibility of Cogta at the national level for classification of the disaster. And they've been hard at work since the warning was indicated, firstly by putting up teams to respond. So a response of someone who says they are officials and they are part of response teams, because Department of Health is responsible for health services, social development, fire and rescue, to ensure that it's part of a disaster management and it's part of government planning, ensuring that we take care of disaster. The information has been submitted to our office, which is a preliminary study that has been undertaken both by our officials which are on the ground, human settlements, ourselves at Cogta, but also to ensure that the MEC handed the report, who was also on site yesterday, to ensure that she also physically visit and see the areas. We've collected and collated the information. I'm hopeful that the National Disaster Management Center will be able to proclaim a disaster very shortly and classify the level in which it is at. Coincidentally, last week on Tuesday, I was there in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, dispatching around 3.1 billion, of course not meant for KwaZulu-Natal only, for all the municipalities that experienced disaster in the January, February, for the repairs of the infrastructure that they have. I mean, in the municipality where I was, they were allocated also what they are supposed to be able to get as per the plan and the destruction of property. We've spoken about KwaZulu-Natal, also specifically the area of KwaDukuza and eThekwini. Their allocation has been made by national government after the classification. The money is with the municipalities now and we're assisting them through MISA to rebuild. Only to reconstruct a place that has been damaged. It doesn't happen overnight. But the processes indicate that through the joint operation centers which are run by provinces, they submit a report as Cogta, we issue the funds. And we have turned the situation around in terms of the length and the duration it takes to allocate the funds. I'm talking about the allocation which happened on Tuesday for the entire country on what happened in January and February.
Yeah. Talking about collating information, are you able to put a figure right now as to the total cost of damage specifically in the Margate area?
Not really, Toli, and that is what the NDMC, together with the team of engineers who are remaining on site, will be trying to do those cost estimates. But in terms of collating of information, which street has been washed away, which house has been washed away, how many fatalities, how much is needed for search and rescue, in terms of teams and numbers, we have all that ready. It takes a bit of time to fully quantify. In fact, a disaster can happen and you may think a bridge is still standing, but after a month it collapses and you would have classified. So you do find that even after we've done the initial classification, which we want to do it in a hurried manner to begin to repair, particularly the roads where communities can't drive or walk and cross, it becomes a matter of agents. But then we do have a secondary classification and budgeting, which would have looked at the overall duration and the timing. Currently, we are at a level 4 going down of what the indicators of weather services show. So it means we are at the clearing stage and first determination. But I must comfort our viewers. We don't wait for the final report. What we have, we work on. Yes, that's why we will call it a preliminary budget. If you go to human settlement, for example, they will either be issuing building material or temporary housing, which is what they will do in the immediate to ensure that once it clears properly, we assess as to whether is it still feasible for the people to stay where they were staying, to build where they were, or we need to relocate so that we ultimately build in a one resilient area. So it's not just a one-shot report that seems to fix everything in a space of a lightning.
Very briefly, Minister, I'm out of time. Let's then deal with what the Democratic Alliance has said today. And Christopher Pappas, very clear that the people who were working behind him, and you could literally see them, he says those are non-profit organizations and business people who essentially are doing what should be the work of government officials. And he says those who did turn up, they were simply there to show face. How does that sit with you?
No, he's also a member of government. I go to a clinic and find people who I will view that they are not putting sufficient clinic, and I tell them, stand up, put the effort, help the old woman who's sitting and crying of pain. If you see an official that is not doing his or her job, as a leader, it doesn't matter what party you come from. You must make sure that you hold them accountable to do what they're supposed to do. But as part of disaster planning, joint operation teams, we have all the teams that are on site, that meets every day at 8 o'clock. I invite him to also come at the 8 o'clock to ensure that he also indicates the officials who were not working and they were supposed to be working. But who did the search and rescue? As part of our planning, we do get civil society, gift of the givers, Red Cross, local NGOs, which assist people on a day-to-day basis. And they don't stop when it's disaster. They actually show up more and assist government. And in our strategy, it's partnership. That's what community development is about. That's what local government is about, is the state together with its communities to build a better future for themselves. They define it better. So what are we supposed to do as government? Please, gift of the givers, even if you want to open up for our people, do a soup for them and give them a blanket, don't do that, because it's the responsibility of government. There's no government that works like that. We embrace them. They operate within our joint operation centers. Where they've covered, we then cover other areas. For example, DSD will then look with Home Affairs to re-register the people, give food parcels. But we're not going to duplicate the food parcels when gift of the givers is giving food parcels. But there are those who are already on the ground, as it is, from government, who are representing government and joint operation centers, from SAPS, health, emergency services and rescue, from the police, water and sky divers, who all come at the time of a disaster to ensure that they comb the area. If there are fatalities, look for the bodies and assist. There are business centers through the Department of Minister Patel and SMME Minister Stella Ndabeni, where we also try to assist business in terms of the rebuilding program on what they would have lost. So there are government programs, and if they are not sufficient, it could be the limitation of funding. But to say government is absent, I refuse.
Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs Minister Thembi Nkadimeng, thank you very much for your time this evening.